Well, from Southern Ontario, it's what is it? It's October 30th here in Canada. So, if you just woke up out of a coma, if you had that misfortune, and now you have the dubious fortune of, you're waking up and saying, "What's going on in the world, Uncle Carl?" Well, one of the things going on is it's come to light, it's common knowledge now, the UN is paying mass migrants. That's right, they get little envelopes of money, they get credit cards, they get a phone card, they get phones. I mean, they don't swim across the Atlantic and wade up the Darien Gap and through Panama and across Mexico and into the United States on their own dime. The money comes, a lot of it, we'll never know how much, from the UN. Which, if you just woke up out of the coma, the UN is part of the World Economic Forum, the WHO, the IMF, the big bank and big banks, etc. All one entity, okay? We know that. So where does the UN get its money from? Well, two interesting points here. I'm going to start in Canada and then I'll drop down to our friends, allies, and trading partners south of the border. Some really quick, okay. It's kind of complex to understand. All 194 member nations of the UN have to donate, what do they call it? Well, they have to, it's budgeted, they have to give X amount of money to the UN. The formula is rather complex. It's based on GDP, and times are divided by whatever number of people, maybe some other stuff, I don't know. Like I say, it's complex. We needn't understand it, but it comes to a mandatory amount, and then there's a voluntary amount. So I took a quick look. In Canada in 2021, our mandatory amount was 85 million. In 2023, it's pushing 77 million. Gee, one might be able to cross-correlate these figures, I suppose, to get an estimate of our actual deficit, right? Why are we down like $9 million less? Well, we must have less money, right? I'm not going to do that. I don't need the headache, and I digress. So in 2023, then, we gave 76, approaching 77 million, and an additional, this is voluntary, $12 million to the UN. That's voluntarily. All of that money then buying mass migration into all of the Western nations, right? So, yeah, so Canada is a leader in total amount of voluntary money over and above the mandatory money. Woohoo, yeah. Wow, see Trudeau's UN, part of the WHO, part of the UN, WEF, the whole rats warring devils and devils. So, okay. Now we cross south of the border. Now, I didn't take the figures in here on this, but you may remember when Trump was in power, he gave a really great speech at the UN where he said, "We're not playing this world game. The US is going to remain independent, as it always has been, our own sovereignty, etc." It was a great speech. My opinion on Trump doesn't matter, okay? But that speech, that was America. Old America. Good America. So, anyways, and he said at the time, no voluntary money over and above the mandatory UN amount, because he's obliged, I guess under international binding law, as a UN member, he has to give that formula amount. But he said no extra. Not going to happen. I wonder if he wasn't still in power, if he wouldn't have somehow gotten out of that contractual obligation and said, no, I'm not paying you guys to send migrants that I got to build a fence to keep out or pay for. Anyways, he's not in power anymore. Biden is. What's Biden do? The first thing he got in is he went back to the voluntary amount and upped it hugely. Again, I didn't take in the numbers. I'm not American. It's not my place to comment. Although I guess I sort of am, but I try not to. The UN budget for 2023 was $3.4 million. And, of course, America is the biggest contributor to the UN under the mandatory amounts. If you're American, you might want to look into those figures for your own self. So, anyways, we in the Western nations, be you American or Canadian, we're paying tax to bring the people we don't want here. Yeah, okay. But some people think this is all just a conspiracy theory, that the UN's a peacekeeping force. Well, they've long since ceased to be a peacekeeping force. That much is for sure. Oh, and if you doubt that the UN is part of the WEF, you might note just a couple of months ago they signed a treaty together to speed up Agenda 2030. Quote, speed up, unquote, Agenda 2030. Which here in Canada, I'm quite certain is Agenda 2025. However, just I'd throw it out there at you.